Welcome, my dear student. Welcome you again to the online class of Kumula Modern High School. Today, I'm going to take a class on English second paper, and is one of the topics of English grammar. And before announcing my topic, I would like to share you some pictures from which you will be able to understand the topics I am going to discuss. So we start our class today. Look at the pictures. 3 degrees of comparisons. This is a big apple, if I say. It is bigger than these. And it is bigger, the biggest, if I compare it with the other twos. Okay. It's a big apple. It is bigger than these. And it is the biggest from the other two. Okay. Let's see another picture. Look at this. This man is alone here. This is positive. We are not going to compare him with others. But from these pictures, you can understand the comparative degrees. And this is another picture from which you can understand the superlative degrees. So when you compare two things or two persons, in that case it is comparative. Then when you compare more than two, then it will be superlative. This is the primary ideas that you can have in changing degrees. So our today's topic is comparison of degrees, and it is for class 8 to 10. Now, what is comparison of degree? Adjectives and adverbs can have 3 degrees of comparison: the positive degree, comparative degree, and superlative degree that we have seen in our previous slide. Positive degree, comparative degree, and superlative degree. From these pictures, you may have some certain ideas about what positive, comparative, and superlative degrees. Okay. Now let's move to the definition of these. The positive degree is used to state something about the noun or pronoun. The comparative degree is used when two things are compared, that we have seen in the previous picture. The superlative degree is used when more than two things are compared. Okay. So I hope you may have now some ideas about the degrees, and there are 3 degrees: positive, comparative, and superlative. And we use positive degree to state something about the noun or pronoun. Then we use comparative degree when we use two things are compared, and we use superlative degree when more than two things are compared. Now we move. How can we change these sentences from positive to comparative and superlative? And I hope after this lesson, or by the end of the lesson, you will be able to define degrees, and you can transform positive sentence into comparative and superlative sentences also. Now, interchange of degrees of comparison. Look at the first box. This is positive, comparative, and superlative. And I will ask all of you to notice the red colored words and you should have put emphasis on those colors also here. Now if the positive sentence begins with no other, for example, no other poet is as famous as John Keats, and if you are asked to transform this sentence into comparative, then you have to transform it this way. The second subject will be the subject of comparative sentence, first subject, and then you have to use the verb. Now here this is present indefinite tense, this is also present. John Keats is, and as or so as will be left out, and before that you have to use the comparative form of famous. Now we all know the comparative form of famous is more famous. Then you have to use then any other in place of no other, and at the end of the sentence you have to use the rest of the words before verb. Poet. John Keats is more famous than any other poet. Now if you are asked to transform the same sentence into superlative, then you have to transform it in this way. Again you have to write the last subject here, John Keats, then verb is. Remember, if the positive sentence begins with no other, you have to use the before superlative degrees. There is the positive form of famous, the comparative form is more famous, and the superlative form is most famous. Before the superlative form you have to use the only if the sentence begins with no other. Okay, so the answer would be John Keats is the most famous poet. Now if you transform now superlative into positive, then you have to remember the sentence. If there is the plus superlative degree, then you have to transform it into positive by placing no other. Okay, then you have to use the rest of the words of superlative. Poet, no other poet, then verb is, and then you have to use so or as, then the positive form of superlative degrees, most famous, will be famous. Then you have to use as and the subject, John Keats. So if you transform the sentence in this way, then you can be able to identify the relations here. Remember one thing, the meaning of the sentence are same here, but it is transformed from affirmative to negative and then negative to affirmative. We are also transforming this sentence from negative to affirmative and affirmative to negative also. Okay. Then let's move to the second rules. Now look at the second sentence, very few. If the positive sentence begins with the word very few, then very few inventions of modern science are as great as mobile phone. Then we have to transform this sentence into comparative in this way. At first we will write the last subject here, mobile phone, then the verb is, the comparative form of great is greater. Then in place of very few we have to use than most other, and the other words from very few to verb, inventions of modern science. So the answer will be mobile phone is greater than most other inventions of modern science. Here's the difference. In the last phase, or in the last rules we have discussed, if the sentence begins with no other, we use then any other. But if the sentence, a positive sentence begins with very few, you have to use then most other, then many other, then few other. But remember one thing, after very few, the noun and the verb is always plural. Inventions and at the here are is also plural. And if you are asked to transform the positive sentence into superlative, then you have to start in this way. The subject, the last subject, mobile phone, then verb is. If the sentence begins with very few, you have to use one of the. And then the superlative form of great, the greatest. And then the rest of the words before verb, inventions of modern science. So the answer is mobile phone is one of the greatest inventions of modern science. You have to remember one thing, then after one of the noun is always plural, inventions. The same way, after than most other, the noun is inventions, not invention. Okay, now if you are asked to transform any sentence from superlative to positive, if the sentence there is one of the, then you have to start it with very few. Then the words of the other words of after superlative, inventions of modern science, then the verb are, then you have to use here so or as, then the positive form of greatest, great, and you have to use again as, and the subject, mobile phone. Very few inventions of modern science are as great as mobile phone. Now if you're asked to transform superlative into comparative, the subject and verb will be the same. Then the comparative superlative comparative from greatest, greater, and in place of one of the, you have to use then most other, and the rest of the words, inventions of modern science. That is, mobile phone is greater than most other inventions of modern science. And notice carefully, the one of the is left out here, and we have used then most other if the sentence, if there is one of the in superlative sentence, and also if you are asked to transform it into positive one, you have to use very few. Okay, let's move to the second rules. Now look at another rules here. If the sentence, a positive sentence begin with so as dot dot as, and if you are asked to transform it into comparative sentence, then you have to use in this way. You have to left out so dot dot as, and in place of as you have to use then. The last subject, an unhealthy rich man is not so happy as a healthy poor man. Now, a healthy poor man was the last subject of this sentence, or I would say noun phrase. This phrase, it became the subject of this comparative sentence. A healthy poor man, the verb remains same, is. The comparative form of happy is happier. Then you have to use then in place of as, and the first subject, an unhealthy rich man. Okay, very noticeably careful. Then the sentence was in negative form. Now it became affirmative also. We have transformed it into a comparative sentence. At the same time, it became negative also. Now, if you are asked to transform the sentence from comparative to positive one, and if there is only then, and you are asked to transform it into positive one, in this time, this positive sentence will be comparative sentence will be positive one, and at the same time, it will be negative sentence also. Look at the sentence. An unhealthy rich man became the subject of the sentence, an unhealthy rich man. the verb remain the same. Is it was a affirmative sentence, and we have to use it not here. And before the positive form, we have to use so or as. And if the sentence is negative, you have to use so. Okay. Then the positive form of happier is happy, and in place of then, you have to use as, and then first subject, the last subject, an unhealthy rich man. So the answer is, an unhealthy rich man is not so happy as a healthy poor man. The meaning of the sentence remains same in case of any transformational sentence of degrees. The meaning of the sentence remains same. But if the sentence is affirmative, it became negative also. Notice carefully. Okay. Now we have to learn mainly 3 rules here. First, I would like to back to the first phrase also. We have started the positive sentence with no other, and we have discussed it, how we can transform it into comparative and superlative one. At the same time, you can convert it from comparative to superlative and comparative to positive and comparative to superlative also. Now, if I ask to confirm that John Keats is more famous than any other poet, in that case, you have to start it with no other. And if you're asked to transform a comparative sentence with than any other into superlative, you have to use the plus superlative. This is the main point. But if you are given a sentence that starts, positive sentence starts with very few, you have to use one of the after subject. This is the difference between no other and very few. On the other hand, if the superlative sentence there is one of the, you have to use very few at the beginning of the positive sentence. But if the sentence is only the plus superlative degree, in that case, we have to use no other. Now look at this sentence. Mobile phone is one of the greatest inventions. That's why we have started the sentence with very few. Then the rest of the words of superlative degree, inventions of modern science. Now the subject is inventions, and we have to use are. This is the subject and this is the verb. According to the rules of subject and subject of agreement, if the subject of a sentence is plural, the verb will automatically be plural. And then is or so you can use here. And the superlative form, positive form of the greatest, great, then as, then mobile phone. I think if you write by pausing the video, if you can write the box, then transform them in your own way, then I think it will be very easy for you to understand the transformation of degrees very easily. And it will be very helpful for you. Okay. Now, I would like to give you some homework also. And after doing this, you can exercise it from the previous board questions also. And it will be very helpful if you do the exercise. And you all know that practice makes man perfect. Doing without any sorts of exercise, you can't expect a good understanding. For your better understanding and for your improving the quality of your education, you have to exercise must. Okay. Otherwise, it will be really difficult to remember the things I've discussed with you. So I will give you some homework and do exercise on degree change from previous board questions. You should do at least 20 sentences and transform them. You should select 20 sentences and transform them into a positive and comparative one. Okay. And hopefully you will complete your work, and thank you very much for your patience and watching my class very patiently. So I will ask you to stay home and stay safe and keep your mask on whenever you go outside of your home. Please keep your mask on whenever you will go outside your home. So thank you very much and see you in my next class also.